kind of music, his kind of music, and the music of others kind of influencing everybody now?
I think it's here to stay in various forms, yeah. I mean,
Phil Collins once said that watching a certain famous drummer play made him physically angry. He believed their technique represented everything wrong with modern drumming. The man who created In the Air Tonight and some of the most iconic drum sounds in music history had some seriously harsh opinions about his fellow drummers. Behind Collins's friendly smile and catchy pop songs was a drummer who took his craft extremely seriously. He didn't just dislike certain playing styles. He genuinely believed some drummers were destroying the art form he had spent decades perfecting. From overrated rock legends to session players who became famous for the wrong reasons, nobody was safe from Phil's brutal critiques. The thing about Phil Collins is that he earned the right to have these opinions. He was the drummer for Genesis before becoming a solo superstar, and he understood rhythm in ways that most musicians never could. When he criticized other drummers, it wasn't just jealousy. It was the perspective of someone who knew exactly what good drumming should sound like. Collins's opinions weren't casual comments or friendly disagreements. These were full-blown attacks on players who he felt were ruining drumming for everyone else. Some of these opinions completely change how you think about certain legendary musicians. Lars Ulrich, from Metallica. Phil Collins allegedly couldn't stand everything about Lars Ulrich's approach to drumming. While millions of metal fans were headbanging to Metallica's thunderous sound, Collins was reportedly thinking that Ulrich was one of the most overrated drummers in rock history. Collins allegedly said in private that Ulrich's drumming was all volume and no technique. He believed that any decent drummer could play Metallica songs with their eyes closed. He reportedly couldn't understand how someone with such limited technical ability could become famous in a band that was supposed to be about musical excellence. The fact that Ulrich was making millions while truly skilled drummers remained unknown apparently drove Collins absolutely crazy. What really bothered Collins was Ulrich's attitude about drumming. While Collins approached drums like a serious musical instrument that required years of study, Ulrich seemed to treat it like a way to make noise and look cool on stage. Collins allegedly said that Ulrich represented everything wrong with rock drumming, all aggression and no subtlety. The business side of this feud made it even worse. Metallica was selling millions of albums and headlining massive festivals, while Collins felt like more technically skilled drummers were being ignored by the industry. He reportedly made comments about how metal music was dumbing down drumming and making people think that hitting things hard was the same as playing well. Industry insiders claimed that Collins would get visibly frustrated when music magazines would include Ulrich on lists of great drummers. He allegedly felt like these publications were misleading young musicians and encouraging them to focus on image over actual skill development. Ringo Starr from the Beatles. This one might shock Beatles fans everywhere. Collins reportedly had major problems with how Ringo was considered a great drummer when, in Phil's opinion, he was just a lucky guy who happened to be in the right place at the right time with the most successful band in history. Collins allegedly said that Ringo's drumming was painfully simple, and that the Beatles could have hired any competent session drummer and achieved the same results. He reportedly couldn't understand how someone with such basic technique could be called influential, when all he did was keep simple time and occasionally add a basic fill. What made this criticism so harsh was that Collins genuinely respected the Beatles' songwriting and overall musical contributions, but he allegedly felt like Ringo was the weak link who got credit simply because he was part of the group. Collins reportedly said that Ringo rode on the success of Lennon and McCartney's genius without contributing anything musically significant himself. The technical aspects really bothered Collins. While he was known for complex fills, interesting rhythms, and innovative recording techniques, Ringo's style was deliberately simple and straightforward. Collins allegedly couldn't respect a drummer who seemed satisfied with mediocrity when the instrument was capable of so much more expression and complexity. Industry gossip suggested that Collins would get particularly annoyed when young drummers would cite Ringo as an influence. He reportedly felt like this was encouraging musicians to aim low and accept basic competence instead of pushing themselves to develop real skills and creativity behind the drum kit. Tommy Lee from Motley Crue. Collins allegedly saw Tommy Lee as the perfect example of style over substance. While Lee was famous for his spinning drum kits, wild stage antics, and rock star lifestyle, Collins reportedly thought he was a mediocre drummer who relied on gimmicks to distract from his limited abilities. Collins allegedly said that Lee's whole approach to drumming was circus performance rather than serious musicianship. He reportedly couldn't stand how Lee would do backflips and play upside-down solos when he should have been focusing on serving the songs and playing with proper technique. Collins apparently saw this as disrespectful to the craft of drumming. The technical criticism was brutal. Collins allegedly said that if you removed all the visual theatrics, Lee was just playing basic rock beats that any beginner could master in a few months. He reportedly felt like Lee's fame came from his personality and wild behavior rather than any actual drumming talent, which apparently disgusted Collins as a serious musician. What really bothered Collins was how Lee's success influenced other drummers to focus on showmanship over skill development. Collins allegedly worried that young players would see Tommy Lee's career and think that being entertaining was more important than being technically skilled or musically sensitive. The industry recognition made this feud even more personal. Lee was getting magazine covers and endorsement deals, while Collins felt like more deserving drummers were being overlooked. He reportedly made harsh comments about how the music business was rewarding the wrong qualities and sending terrible messages to aspiring musicians. Collins allegedly said that drummers like Lee were turning the instrument into a joke and making serious players look boring by comparison, even though they were doing the real musical work. Neil Peart, from Rush. This might be the most controversial opinion on the list. While most drummers worshipped Peart as a technical master, Collins allegedly thought he was an overindulgent show-off who missed the entire point of what drumming should be about. Collins reportedly said that Peart's drumming was technically impressive, but musically pointless, and that his marathon drum solos were just ego trips that served no purpose in the context of the songs. While other musicians praised Peart's complexity, Collins allegedly saw it as self-indulgent, impressive to other drummers, but boring for actual listeners. The philosophical difference was huge. Collins believed that drumming should serve the song and support the other musicians, while Peart seemed to view drums as a solo instrument that deserved as much attention as guitars or vocals. Collins allegedly said that Peart's approach was selfish and that good drummers should know when to play less, not more. What really frustrated Collins was how Peart's influence led to an entire generation of drummers who thought that complexity automatically meant quality. Collins reportedly felt like young players were learning Peart's complicated patterns without understanding when and why to use restraint, which was actually the harder skill to master. Industry insiders claimed that Collins would get particularly annoyed when critics would compare his drumming unfavorably to Peart's technical abilities. Collins allegedly felt like these comparisons missed the point entirely. He wasn't trying to show off. He was trying to make great music that people actually wanted to listen to. The irony wasn't lost on Collins that Peart was considered the thinking man's drummer, when Collins felt like truly intelligent drumming meant knowing when not to play. John Bonham from Led Zeppelin. This criticism shocked the entire drumming community. While Bonham was universally considered one of the greatest rock drummers ever, Collins allegedly thought he was an overrated basher who got by on power rather than actual skill or musical intelligence. Collins reportedly said that Bonham's drumming was all thunder and no lightning, and that his famous power came from hitting hard rather than playing smart. While other musicians praised Bonham's groove and feel, Collins allegedly dismissed him as a one-dimensional player who couldn't handle subtle or complex musical situations. The technical criticism was savage. Collins allegedly said that Bonham's fills were sloppy, and that his timing, while powerful, wasn't as precise as people claimed. He reportedly felt like Bonham's reputation was built more on mythology and rock legend status than on actual drumming excellence when analyzed objectively. What bothered Collins most was how Bonham's influence encouraged drummers to focus on volume and aggression over music. Sensitivity. Collins allegedly said that countless rock drummers had ruined perfectly good songs by trying to copy Bonham's approach without understanding that not every musical situation called for that level of intensity. The industry worship of Bonham apparently drove Collins crazy. He reportedly couldn't understand how someone who mainly played basic rock beats loudly could be considered more influential than drummers who had mastered multiple styles and could adapt to any musical context. Collins allegedly said that Bonham's legacy had poisoned rock drumming by making young players think that hitting hard was the same as playing well, when real drumming required years of study and musical understanding. Keith Moon, from The Who. Here we have Collins' most shocking takedown, because Moon is beloved by millions as the wild man of rock drumming. But Collins allegedly saw him as a chaotic amateur who had no business being in a professional band, and whose destructive approach to drumming set a terrible example for future musicians. Collins reportedly said that Moon couldn't play a simple beat to save his life, and that his famous unpredictable style was actually just poor technique disguised as creativity. While fans loved Moon's explosive energy, Collins allegedly saw it as undisciplined noise that hurt The Who's songs rather than helping them. The technical criticism was absolutely brutal. Collins allegedly said that Moon had no sense of dynamics, couldn't play quietly when songs needed subtlety, and that his fills were random rather than musical. He reportedly felt like Moon was just a guy who hit drums randomly and got lucky that it sometimes worked with The Who's chaotic rock sound. What really bothered Collins was how Moon's reputation encouraged drummers to think that being wild and unpredictable was more important than being reliable and musical. Collins alleges. Dully said that Moon's influence had created generations of drummers who thought that destroying drum kits and playing chaotically was the same as being creative. The lifestyle issues made Collins even more critical. While Moon was famous for his wild partying and destructive behavior, Collins felt like this overshadowed any legitimate musical discussion about drumming. He allegedly said that Moon was more famous for being crazy than for any actual musical contributions. Collins reportedly said that Moon represented everything wrong with rock culture. The idea that being out of control was somehow more authentic than being disciplined and professional. The fact that Moon died young from his excessive lifestyle apparently reinforced Collins's belief that this approach to music and life was fundamentally destructive and wrong. Conclusion: these were Phil Collins's most controversial drumming opinions. Whether you agree with them or not, they show how seriously he took his craft, and how frustrated he became with what he saw as the decline of drumming standards in popular music. Collins believed that good drumming required discipline, musical intelligence, and years of dedicated study, not just the ability to hit things hard or put on a good show. His criticisms reveal a deep philosophical divide in how drummers approach their instrument. Some see it as a tool for serving songs and supporting other musicians, while others view it as a vehicle for personal expression and technical display. Collins clearly fell into the first camp, and he wasn't shy about expressing his displeasure with those who took the opposite approach.